Welcome. At this event, we have simultaneous interpretation. Please identify the interpretation icon located at the bottom of your screen. Select the language of your preference. If you want to listen to the original speaker, return to floor at any time. In order to make the audio for the interpreters as clear as possible, please do not activate your microphone at any time unless you have an intervention. You can write questions or comments using the chat icon. The moderator will read them when possible. If you have any technical issue, please send a private chat to one of our technicians online. Thank you. Bienvenidos. En este evento contaremos con interpretación simultánea. Le rogamos identificar el menú de interpretación ubicado en la parte inferior de su pantalla. Seleccionar el idioma que desee escuchar. Si desea escuchar al orador, regrese a Flor en cualquier momento. A fin de que el audio para los intérpretes sea lo más claro posible, les solicitamos no activar sus micrófonos en ningún momento, a menos que tenga alguna intervención. Pueden escribir en el chat las preguntas o comentarios que tengan. El moderador dará respuesta en cuanto les sea posible. Si tiene algún detalle técnico, puede escribirle en privado a alguno de nuestros técnicos en línea. Muchas gracias. Thomas.
Hi, good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are, to all of you. My name is Mariana Flores from the International Affairs Office at the Government of Mexico City and coordinator of the Secretariat of the Third World Forum on Cities and Territories of Peace. And on behalf of Mexico City and the International Organizing Committee of the Forum, I want to welcome you to the launch of the Guides of Designing Violence Prevention Interventions on this very special day, the Human Rights Day. The World Forum on Cities and Territories of Peace is not only an event, it is a process. Have been implemented in our territories. This forum is a collaborative process where more than 20 organizations, networks, research institutes, and UN agencies. And as part of this process, we encourage these and other organizations like GIC to engage actively in these dialogues by promoting self-organized sessions and activities, just as the one that brings us together today, to enrich and contribute to the forum. So we invite you to learn more on how to participate at our website, www.ciudadesdepaz.com. It is an honor for me to be here, and once again, welcome to this webinar, and thank you for your participation.
Thank you very much, Mariana, for your welcoming words. I am going to go to the next slide. And, again, welcome and good afternoon, everyone, to this virtual room. Muy buenas tardes y buenos días a todos ustedes participantes. It is really my pleasure to be here today and share this global launch of the Guides of Designing Integrated Violence Prevention Interventions. My name is Thomas Hellman, and I am part of the team of the Inclusive Violence and Crime Prevention Program from GIZ in South Africa. We are really excited and that you followed the invitation to participate here today and to launch with us this set of guides. We, between the South African German Development Corporation and its various partners from government and civil society, have jointly been working on for the last 2 years. Before we dive into the launch, I would like to provide you with a very short overview of today's agenda. So after the introduction and welcoming that we are doing at the moment, we will have some opening remarks from South Africa's Deputy Director General, Mr. Themba Fosi, before we will receive a short message of support from the German Embassy in South Africa. We will then really go into detail into a detailed presentation of the guides, of how they were developed, the themes, and how these guides aim to support for those designing violence prevention interventions in South Africa, and maybe even to start looking into opportunities of adapting those to other urban areas around the globe, as we have participants that are not only from South Africa, but are actually also from other cities and other institutions around the globe from the World Forum. To make it practical and also a little bit spicy, we will provide you with a selection of 2 case studies on the ground presented by practitioners. And then lastly, I'm also very excited to hear more from the practitioners from other cities around the globe, as I mentioned before. We will have an input from the city of Belo Horizonte in Brazil, from Mexico City, of course, in Mexico, and the current host of the World Forum, and the organization Demos Paz in Madrid, in Spain. Again, please use the chat whenever you feel like and you have a question or a comment. We will try to cluster and accommodate your questions during the open discussion and exchanges that are then towards the end of our session. That's also going to be supported by our technical support in the background, as you've already seen. You can either put them in English or you can put them in Spanish. And as you heard before, we're pleased to have interpretation service that runs in the background to support us at all times. Now, and without any further delay, I would now like to welcome Mr. Themba Fossi, our DDG from the National Department of Corporate Governance. Please, Mr. Fossi, we would like to now hand over to you with your opening remarks. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Program Director, our host, the World Forum of Cities and Territories of Peace, hosted by Mexico, and the participants from the World Forum and the International Organizing Committee, constituted by all these bodies, international bodies, social organizations, cities and networks of cities, and to our South African national and local government colleagues, civil society representatives, and then all the participants who participated in the initiative across the field of violence prevention in the South African and the German Development Corporation. On behalf of the Department of Cooperative Governance, it is my pleasure to be here today and to offer a few words of support at this global launch event, in particular on the closing of the 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children campaign, which is led by our national government. I would firstly like to extend my congratulations to the South African and the German Development Corporation, which has jointly working with many partners across the spheres of government, civil society, that have contributed to the development of the set of guides to designing integrated violence prevention and the case studies booklet over the past 2 years, as you have indicated. Since 2005, violence prevention has been a key topic for the South African and the German Development Corporation. This collaboration has included investments in violence prevention through urban upgrading interventions across the country, and a bilateral technical cooperation program on violence and crime prevention. These programs have served to support the implementation of national strategies and frameworks to support one of the key priorities of South Africa, that of building a safer and more inclusive communities based on respect for universal human rights and gender equality as enshrined in our Constitution. While the world is facing the challenges of COVID-19 pandemic, here in South Africa, we are experiencing what we call a second pandemic, which is gender-based violence and femicide. Our president made this declaration and ensured that the whole country prioritizes addressing gender-based violence and femicide. As a country, we have embarked on a whole of government approach to building safer communities, with numerous policies, national strategies put in place over the last decade. Our urban policy, the Integrated Urban Development Framework, recognizes living free from the threat of fear of violence and crime as a basic human right. Safety is integrated as a cross-cutting theme in the policy, which is intended to realize the outcomes of spatial transformation, integrated and sustainable human settlement, economic development, and active citizenship. Our newly adopted district development model seeks to implement a new integrated approach across all government to ensure a coordinated, evidence-based planning, budgeting, and implementation of government programs that responds to the pressing needs of local communities, addressing the high levels of violence, especially gender-based violence, is one of the core needs of many, particularly vulnerable and disadvantaged communities. I would also like to mention the white paper on safety and security, which sets out a comprehensive policy framework for evidence-based approaches to the prevention of violence and crime in South Africa, with 6 key themes reflected in the products presented in today's launch. Our National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide augments this policy as a dedicated strategy to tackle these most pressing of national priorities. We are pleased to have the opportunity to join and support this event today, to launch and disseminate the knowledge of the set of guides which provides an excellent orientation for practitioners, political leaders, community members working and committed to creating a safer communities. It provides clear and practical guidance on approaches to implement area-based integrated interventions that are dedicated to violence and crime prevention, drawing on the insights, lessons learned from the vast experiences of the practitioners and experts working together in the South African and German Development Cooperation, and is a cornerstone for practical implementation at local level in realizing these national development goals towards creating safer communities. Each of the 6 guides and the complementary case study booklet provides a step-by-step guide towards a collaborative effort, working holistically, synergistically, and inclusivity towards violence prevention in specific areas. It provides sophisticated insight into unlocking local residents' roles as decision makers, as co-creators, also as envisaged in the country's key national violence prevention policies. In order to achieve a higher impact in responding to the ongoing high rates of violence in South Africa, we would like to encourage partners and stakeholders to work on a strong alignment to existing national policies and strategies, such as the ones I've mentioned, the white paper on safety and security, the Integrated Urban Development Framework, and the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence. Like all the South African government and most spheres have adopted the 17 Sustainable Development Goals in 2015. Goal 11 specifically talked to the objective of making our cities and human settlement inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. Without a doubt, achieving this ambitious goal requires a collective multi-stakeholder effort and a commitment across all different sectors in society. It is wonderful, therefore, to see that today at today's event, we have such a diverse range of participants from national, local, senior officials, and academic and research representatives. I'm also especially grateful to the opportunity to have practitioners and experts around the globe from the World Forum to share their insight with of these guides, but also to receive immediate feedback and support of future peer learning and exchange. We are committed to jointly work for safer and more inclusive cities, highlighting the importance of building coexistence and peace in cities and territories that identifies the causes of tensions and violence and supports with the implementation of public policies, programs, and citizens' initiatives, especially those that are targeting the most vulnerable groups, such as women and children, and to build a culture and education for peace, as outlined within the World Forum. I wish all of us an interesting event, and thank you very much for the organizers and all the participants for your contribution and your support. And thank you very much for this opportunity. Thanks, and over to you, Thomas. Thanks.
Mr. Fossi, thank you very much for framing this launch and for again reiterating your government commitments to support this national key priority. I would now like to hand over to our next speaker, Ms. Elke Wolf, the Deputy Head of Cooperation within the German Embassy in Pretoria in South Africa. Over to you, Elke.
Thank you, Thomas, and good afternoon, good morning to the world. Our host, the World Forum of Cities and Territories of Peace, Deputy Director General Themba Fossi, participants from the World Forum, representatives of the South African national and local government and civil society, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Elke Wolf. I'm the Deputy Head of Cooperation at the German Embassy in South Africa. On behalf of the German Ambassador, Dr. Martin Schäfer, it is my pleasure to reiterate the German support during today's global launch of the guides to designing integrated violence prevention interventions as a contribution to a safer and more inclusive South Africa, as it is outlined in South Africa's National Development Plan 2030. 2 weeks ago, South Africa went through a 5 days of mourning, not only for the victims of COVID-19, but also for the victims of gender-based violence. This shows me, and this shows all of us, how important today's intervention is. Germany, as your partner, is with you in these challenging times. The root causes of violence and crime are diverse, and it is our utmost concern to continue assisting stakeholders from all spheres of government, civil society, and academia to address the risk factors for violence and crime holistically and in an integrated way, as outlined in the South African National Policy Framework on Violence Prevention, as well as in its national urban policy. These guides and the accompanying case study booklet with 40 different good practices from around the country are an example of how the various violence prevention strategies can be implemented at a very localized, area-based level and to foster collaboration and integration. It may not be the recipe of guaranteed success, but it outlines and offers considerations for those designing interventions within South Africa's violence prevention interventions. I hope as well that these knowledge products are not only useful in a South African context, but also serve as a useful resource for other countries that are confronted with similarly high levels of violence and crime. Last but not least, I would like to emphasize the significance of launching these guides today, which is the final day of the 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children, as mentioned already by the previous speaker, Deputy Director General Mr. Fossey. Reducing the alarming levels of gender-based violence is one of the most urgent priorities, not only in South Africa, but in many other countries around the world. It is my sincere belief that the resources we are launching today are valuable support in our joint efforts to make communities safer for all residents, but especially for women and children. I wish you all the best with the guides going forward. Germany has already committed to start supporting the application of these guides through an upscaling area-based intervention called Safer Places. And we look forward to further peer exchange in South Africa, but also globally through South-South learning and networking in the future. All the best and thank you very much. Back to you, Thomas.
Dear Ms. Wolf, thank you very much for also your welcoming message and message of support for the launch, but in particular for the guides themselves. We would now like to come to our next item in the agenda, which is the actual launch and the actual presentation of the guides for you to have a closer look and to get excited about the guides themselves. I would like to hand over to Ms. Gianna Maita from the Violence Prevention through Urban Upgrading NPC. Over to you, Gianna.
Jana, please unmute your mic. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm unmuted now. Hi, everyone. As Thomas said, I'm Gianna Maida from BPUU. I work on the Monitoring, Evaluation, and Learning team, and it is my pleasure to present the guides to you. So I think with that, we'll go to the next slide. And I'd like to share sort of the logic behind what we've created as a whole team. And the way that I'd like to explain it is actually, it may sound a bit corny, but through this metaphor of a tree. So this tree of prevention, obviously, it emphasizes a whole of society and a whole of government approach to violence prevention. So we're going to start from the bottom with the soil. Right, so those are those little dots you see at the bottom. And if we can go to the next slide, we'll kind of zoom in on those. Because the soil of these guides is the 2016 white paper on safety and security, as Mr. Fossey and Ms. Wolf mentioned. So this was really the framework of this knowledge management engagement with many different violence prevention interventions. So the sort of the nurturing soil around these rooted interventions are the 6 pillars of the white paper. So the white paper envisions a society where all people live in safe environments, play a role in creating and maintaining a safe environment, and feel safe from crime and violence, and additionally have equal access to services, especially when they are victims of crime and violence. So embedded in this vision are the 6 pillars of the white paper on safety and security. And so the pillars are active community participation, victim support, early interventions that goes from early childhood development all the way up to employment and livelihood support, and effective and integrated service delivery. As you can see, I'm kind of going like a clock around the circle that you see on your screen. So the last two are safety through environmental design and an effective criminal justice system. So that's sort of the framing that we're going into. Then we've got the roots that are, of this tree in that soil of the white paper. So the roots are actually the work of the practitioners. And if you go to the next slide, I'll actually show in a bit more detail who those practitioners really were. So we had 4 programs that we engaged with in really intensive interviews and small exchanges. I'll get into that in a minute, but the programs that we looked at were safety promotion through urban upgrading, which is in the city of Ciudad, in a particular area called Mamelodi East. Then we looked at safety and peace through urban upgrading in Helenvale, which is in Port Elizabeth in Nelson Mandela Bay municipality. Violence prevention through urban upgrading in the Western Cape, and then several projects and programs within the Inclusive Violence and Crime Prevention Program. And following this launch, you'll actually have a chance to hear from 2 of the programs that were sort of part of this, this engagement. So those are the people that were part of the roots. And then we also engaged with other violence and crime prevention stakeholders from government and from civil society. So there was this focus on those practitioners from the 4 programs, and that's where we dug deep for the case studies. But we worked within this ecosystem of all these other stakeholders who had lessons and ideas to share as well. So I'll talk about that just now. So that's the trunk of the tree. If we can go to the next slide, we'll see what we mean by that. So the trunk of the tree is the process that followed, which is in the next slide, the methodology. The methodology was, I alluded to this a minute ago. So the methodology was these small learning exchanges that was between VPUU, the Nelson Mandela Bay Development Agency, obviously in PE, folks from the Safety Promotion through Urban Upgrading Program in Ciudad, and then from 4 different projects within the GIZ Violence and Crime Prevention Program. In addition, we conducted interviews with key respondents from the 4 programs that I mentioned just now. And then we had 2 larger workshops where the 4 programs came, and then we also had folks from every level of government, from local municipality to district to provincial to national. And then obviously we supported that research with desktop research, and we had peer review sessions once we had actually developed the materials a bit further in order to verify the information with both the folks in the case studies and people from the larger workshops. So that's sort of from soil of this framework of the white paper to roots, the case studies, the programs that are involved, to the trunk. This is, kind of diverting all of those materials and ideas and learnings through our process of, the learning exchanges, the workshops, etc. We got the leaves. So that's the next part of the tree in the next slide. So the leaves are actually the knowledge products that were developed. So we had both a booklet of case studies and these 6 guides. As you can see, the guides correspond with each of the 6 leaves. So the guides I think I'm going to get into sort of each one individually, but they're non-chronological, right? So when you're reading one, you might refer to another. We're not saying that one guide is number 1 or number 2. It's you pick it up when it's relevant to you. So we'll go to the next slide, and I'll explain a little bit about that in just a second. So the guides are accompanied by, like I said, 14 case studies, and they're also accompanied by a key concepts poster. So as you're flipping through a guide, you might say, wait, I'm not actually sure what this actually means. Let me look up why I'm reading about early childhood development when it comes to violence prevention. And you might just take a look at your poster and get an idea of why that concept is really important in what we're looking at. And then lastly, we've got the overview. So if you read the guides online, you'll see that the overview is actually available at the beginning of each of the 6 guides. And then if you read the guides in print, you'll have the overview just by itself, and you'll be able to engage with that material on its own. And it's essentially sort of setting the foundation. So what is violence prevention? What are we talking about when we think about direct and indirect violence, for example? And what are we talking about when we think about area-based interventions, which most of these interventions were area-based? And yeah, that's the overview. So I'm going to turn to the next slide now so that we can discuss sort of a bit more the nitty-gritty of the 6 guides. So each of the guides is ideally meant for integrated teams who are working together on area-based interventions. That might be civil society, it might be government, it might be community leaders, and anyone who comes your way, right, within this project, any sort of area-based engagement intervention. So it doesn't necessarily need to be the team themselves reading them, but also anyone peripheral to, working on policy, working on creating that ecosystem that the violence prevention intervention sits in, related to funding, related to, red tape, those kinds of things. As Ms. Wolf said earlier, these guides are not a recipe book. You're not going to open them and find step-by-step how to do a violence prevention intervention. And the main reason for that is because every area is different. It wouldn't be area-based if it was truly, a step-by-step guide. It's process-oriented. It's a set of advice and lessons learned and considerations that come from different actors, from different sectors, who came together and said, when we think about violence prevention, this is what we think about. This is what's important to know. Whether you're jumping into the deep end, the beginning of a violence prevention intervention, or even when you're midway through. So the guides, as I said earlier, they're sort of interwoven, and they offer a set of strategies towards effective and integrated and area-based violence prevention. They're accompanied by the case studies so that the readers have concrete examples. And then, as I said earlier, the key concepts poster to refer back to for important terms. So with that, I'm going to move to the last slide here of showing you sort of what the guides are about. And I want to ask that everyone takes a close look at what's here, because we're going to ask you to take a vote on what you're most interested in hearing more about. We've got only 8 minutes left, and so I won't be able to dive into every single guide, but I will be able to dive into 1 or 2. So our co-designing integration guide looks at the foundations of working holistically as a team from different sectors within violence prevention. With that comes integrating budgets, and what does it mean to have integrated budgets but one shared vision? And of course, building relationships is absolutely crucial to that. So how can we deepen trust across an integrated team where there might be different actors from many different sectors? It's not without its risks. So we've got a booklet on managing external risks and planning for unpredictability, you might say. And the focus is also on fostering active citizenry. This ties really closely with building relationships, but specifically at the community level. And then sharing knowledge. How do we bring what's happening together in a regular and consistent way so that our work is sustainable and is evidence-based? I'm not going to say any more. I'll get deeper into it after you guys have a chance to vote. So I'm going to ask Elsa and her team to please click on that, the poll. You'll vote for the strategy.
It's coming. Thank you.
Thank you. You've got 30 seconds to make a decision.
Jerusalén, sin ti no es fácil. Y yo tengo fe,
sharing results. Thank you.
Okay, so it looks like integrating budgets came in first place, with fostering active citizenry in second place. So I'm just going to note that if we've got time, I'll also go into fostering active citizenry. All right, so we're going to flip to integrating budgets, and I'll explain a little bit more in detail what we're really talking about in that particular guide. It's a blue one. There we go. Great. So when it comes to integrating budgets, maybe I should give a bit more context into how we asked about this particular booklet. So in our first workshop, the folks from government and from other sectors, but very much so from government, expressed the challenge of integrating budgets. And it felt like we kept touching on it and we kept saying this is a big challenge, but at the same time, it was really hard to dive deeper into discussions on it. So we kind of went back to the drawing board and, formulated a few questions. And during the second workshop, we went back into this subject in more detail. And we actually had a dedicated group working on it. And what came through from that group was that a shared vision, which is a crucial part of co-designing integration as well. So as you can see, these are all interlinked. A shared vision is crucial to integrating budgets because everyone needs to know what they're directing their funding towards. In addition, we talked about sort of the more nuts and bolts elements. So alignment to timelines, knowing so-and-so's fiscal cycle is a little bit different from ours. And here's what we need to do to plan for that. So it came with both conceptual, it comes with both conceptual challenges and the need to plan around what we're actually visioning all together from all our different, separate offices, and what we need to actually be working on a logistical element, on a logistical aspect when it comes to finances. This booklet actually had quite a few implications for policymakers because there were moments where the group said, this is difficult and this doesn't feel like it's working. And I think that this booklet is pretty unique in that there are so many beautiful policies guiding violence prevention at this point. And in fact, there's a new policy coming up, the Integrated Crime and Violence Prevention Strategy. But when it comes to integrating budgets, people said that part of why this was such a challenge is because it was quite murky to navigate. And so the booklet does address that. So it talks about sort of, when it comes to integrating budgets, it talks about what the enabling factors actually are, what do we need to have in place to do this. It talks about how, so additionally in our workshops, people identified the challenges of being in different silos, of different fiscal cycles, like I said, and also resource scarcity. And so the booklet also teased out what the resilient elements were within the group, within all these stakeholders for addressing those challenges. So how could they, maybe some of these challenges were things that they couldn't change, or we're working towards changing them when it comes to silos, but it takes time. So what can we do in the meantime to make sure that our interventions are effective despite these challenges? We talked about different considerations for costing models and also budgeting for sustainability. One of the most important elements was, for example, when you've got an infrastructure intervention, and the idea behind it was partially to upgrade an area which helps to prevent crime and violence. If the structure didn't have funding for operations and maintenance and for activating the space, then the space is going to become unsafe again because people aren't there and they're not using it for a specific purpose, and it's not clean and it's not safe to go there. So those are the kind of considerations when it comes to budgeting for sustainability that we worked on there. And then I think this is a theme in all of the books, but the potential of integrating budgets to improve overall program integration. So essentially kind of the booklet closes by saying, if you can get integrating budgets right, or almost right, nothing's perfect. If you can get it if you can really work on this, it will help in the other elements that we're looking at. It will help with all your other strategies. So yeah, that's integrating budgets. And I see that I won't be able to get to fostering active citizenry, so I must encourage everyone to read the booklets instead. Yeah, we can just check the slide out. And I'll hand over back to Thomas. Thank you so much, everybody. Your comments and questions are welcome at the end. Thanks.
Gianna, thank you very much for really getting into detail for one of the guides. And we would like to encourage, of course, everyone in the virtual room to have a look at the various, at the set of guides. As you saw, it's 6 different guides that kind of like form into obviously one overall guide. And to use them and to encourage also to share and to learn further from them. Again, and this is the slide I actually wanted to show you, is that they are all available on saferspaces.org.za. You can click on the link here and you will be directed directly to the guides, as well as the case study booklet and the poster that Gianna showed us. So thank you very much for that. I think we are very good in time, and we would like to now go to our next session, or the next item in our agenda, which is really to get to know 2 of the various case studies that inputted into the development of these guides. And this resource book is meant for government decision makers and practitioners in South Africa's violence prevention landscape, and to provide with a very nice practical overview of how different interventions at local level can contribute to the implementation of South Africa's national violence prevention framework, as already outlined a couple of times within the presentations, the white paper on safety and security. And without any further delay, I would now, first of all, like to welcome Ms. Ayanda Rochi from Johannesburg City Parks and Zoo, who's a social scientist, and many of you in this room know her. She's very passionate about people-centered public spaces, to advocate for innovative alternative practices, and is also the initiator of the Center of African Public Space. And I'm actually quite sure that in the coming years, you will hear a lot more about the center that is just going to start and to really kick off. And she's going to present in a couple of minutes on the experience of the N Street North Park, which is in the inner city of Johannesburg in South Africa. So over to you, Ayanda.
Thank you very much, Thomas, and hello everyone, wherever you are. I would like to switch off my video because I'm experiencing some network problems.
Sure.
Hi, thank you. So our initiative in the inner city of Johannesburg, it emanated from seeing real and persistent challenges that users of public spaces were confronted with. So it was difficulties related to unsafe spaces, difficulties related to not feeling safe in accessing spaces, especially parks. So as Thomas mentioned, I'm coming from the City Council, Johannesburg City Council, and from the Parks Agency. So what we did in order to address the issue of seeing how parks were looking and how they were becoming sites where criminal activities take place, we decided as City Council departments to come together and work collaboratively, because one of the issues, it was the silo mentality, or working in silos. So what we did, we chose one site, a park in the middle of the inner city. It's called N Street North Park, where we can upgrade, but upgrade together as different city departments, one that deals with safety, public safety, another one that deals with social ills like social development and development of buildings and properties, Johannesburg Development Agency. So the issue with this upgrade really was to test how we can together design alternative ways of working. So over and above thinking about working together as city departments, we also partnered with communities because it was something that we're not doing very well. So we partnered with communities around the park or communities that surround the park and other users of the space. And this is really in line with what the urban development policy of South Africa talks about, the whole of society approach, like working with everyone. And because we were not heavy, we didn't budget for this park upgrade or for this experiment. What we did is that we had to look for additional support outside government. So what we found a local NGO, Sticky Situations, that helped us to engage different stakeholders, from homeless people and people who are not from the country, and street kids, students, using various approaches. And we also found UN Habitat and the Global Public Space Program. We found out that they were using in different cities Minecraft video game to involve young people in urban design. So we partnered with them. And then we also looked for others, and we found GIZ, the Violence and Crime Prevention Program. That was really useful and still is in terms of helping us to think about what are some of the early interventions to prevent crime and violence, and also to promote safety. So really this we talked, or we tackled 3 themes that come out of the white paper on safety and security: the active community participation, the early intervention to prevent crime and violence and also to promote safety, but also safety through an environmental design. I think we did tackle the 4th one as well, that talks about integrated service delivery, as Gianna was presenting. So it was really about how do we work together to co-vision, co-design, and implement the park. So the process itself was, it went very well. But if I can just talk about the lessons briefly, one of them was the fact that we really need to build relationships with communities and other stakeholders. And that became sort of a prerequisite if you want your infrastructure or your parks or whatever you're building to be owned and also to be safe. And the second thing that we learned is the issue of activation, because many times you find public spaces that are deserted with nothing taking place. And we found that we needed to activate the space. So in the case of this N Street North Park project, we worked with communities and using the resources that were in the communities to sort of activate the space. So that was the second thing. The third one, it was around integrated and holistic approach to developing, designing, and implementing parks, which is what we did as city departments and other stakeholders. So those were the 3 lessons. I think just finally, in terms of the outcomes of that program, there were so many things, but through working in that program, we found community members that wanted to be part and parcel of co-managing the parks. So we developed another program that is called Park Activations Coordinator Programs, really using activists from the community to help us activate the space so that it's not deserted, so that it's not exclusive, and so that it's safe. So that's one of the outcomes. The second one, we are seeing now really what Gianna was saying, the work that we did at N Street North Park is becoming a guide for the Parks Agency to build or to develop other public spaces. Really not like a recipe, but also maybe as a tick box exercise to say, have you engaged communities? Have you engaged the schools? Have you spoken to vulnerable groups? So it's been so helpful, and the guide has been like valuable in terms of helping the design of parks. And just the last thing is the fact that through the work that we did in the inner city, other African cities are becoming so interested. And the guide is going to help them as well in order to check how can they sort of employ similar approaches in their cities. So we are beginning or starting a program that is called a Center on African Public Spaces, which is really a pan-African platform for knowledge exchange. So guides like these ones are going to be so useful in terms of cities in Africa, but also in other countries, especially of the Global South, to share things that are working. Thank you so much, Thomas.
Ayanda, thank you very much for your contribution. And you can really see how these guides are driven by actually these amazing experiences on the ground. And here you just mentioned relationships as one of the prerequisites, but also to really know who actually lives and who uses these public space. I'm glad you mentioned the Pan-African Center on Public Space again, and something that I'm sure there's room for more discussions and debates also with other countries of the South to really look into what are African public spaces or what are Latin American public spaces versus what's being brought from a European perspective. Thanks also for already getting into the nitty-gritty of how this intervention of the Institute North Park kind of like links with the white paper of safety and security implementation. And now I would like to hand over to our second speaker of the case study, Mr. Michael Krause, the CEO of the Violence Prevention Through Urban Upgrading NPC. And he's going to present on the Mtongeni Monbabizi Park. And Michael, you've just requested to have remote control of the screen. And I'm going to do that now so that you can actually go over and do it yourself. So please go ahead, Michael. I hope it works.
Good afternoon, good morning, everybody. Thanks very much, Thomas. Thanks very much for everybody. I would like to carry on where Ayanda started. Ayanda started in the CBD, in the city central business district of a city, and I would like to take you to the periphery.
Michael, you are on mute.
Thank you. So was I the whole time on mute?
No.
Okay, sorry. Thomas, is it working or?
Yeah, it works
Yes.
perfectly.
I think it's working.
I think you probably have to do I don't know, sort of, it's
No,
better if you do the.
You are moving it. It's absolutely fine. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Thank you. So while Ayanda spoke about the central business district, I would like to talk about the periphery, and the periphery being the informal settlements. So I would like to combine two things. I would like to combine and take you onto a journey of structural violence and cultural violence. So how does one combine a structural violence, because I'm living in an informal settlement, I do not have access to water, with a cultural violence, because I'm living in an informal settlement and I may not have the same educational chances like somebody in another area, and how we overcame that together with the city and with many other partners. So the question, why are we working with early childhood development? Because it's the best crime prevention. As you can see, World Health Organization says that it is the most cost-effective way to reduce violence and break the silence of poverty. In many of our city strategies and policies, we will have a similar policy that basically says early childhood development is the foundational step for the development. And we know that the first 1,000 days are so important for children to flourish and to grow. So there's a timeline to it, and the timeline is that we started in about 2010 with our public space intervention. And the public space intervention you always got some services provided in informal settlements. In our particular case, you got water services provided in informal settlements. There's supposed to be one water tap for 25 households. That's called essential services. And what you can see at the picture right in front of you is on the left-hand side is what government provided, a dysfunctional water tap. And in the center of the picture, you can see what the community made out of that, a very vernacular community approach to it. So we want water, so we make it work. We basically spoke to the community, we asked the community, what are the needs in those micro spaces and how can we utilize them? So after the provision, there's something, the enabling, and we enabled us partners together with the city and with the community a safe public space. Very simple, we made the water tap safe so that women can wash their clothes there, that people can have safe access to it. A small tree, a bench, something dignified. After the enabling exercise, you want to activate the space, and our activation was centered around early childhood development and out-of-center-based approach, where we developed a curriculum for children between 0 and 6, which is aligned to the national curriculum, so that children get the same opportunities. An assessment of that program has shown that the educational outcomes for the children are comparable of that of affluent areas. So the children that underwent this process of about 12 months out of center are able to enroll in some of the best schools in Cape Town from the educational perspective. And obviously after you activate, you need to have an element of sustain, that's operational maintenance, that's where we often lack, and that's a community-driven process. So it's a simple intervention, a simple toolbox. As I said, a tree, a safe route, a table, a seating, a play area, and having people sit together. Started off in 2012, 1 or 2 places, and then over time it grew, as you can see, from isolated interventions. We started to have a network of interventions that suddenly started to grow and be a systemic intervention. With the systemic intervention comes scale, and with the scale comes also some public facilities, and the public facilities, how do we bring them into? So in that informal settlement, we built something that's called an early childhood development resource center. So something that's like a toy library, some base for the early childhood development program to take place. And we also linked it to the public libraries in the neighboring community, which has an early childhood development focus, so children can go there and you have your system. During COVID, we were particularly challenged with how do we actually provide and continue to provide early childhood development in a space and overcrowded spaces. And that basically made us think a little bit harder, and thinking a little bit harder meant that we're starting to implement and we have done it in another informal settlement, starting to implement Wi-Fi hotspots. So we are in the process of rolling out the 22 early childhood development centers that are in that informal settlement are going to be connected via Wi-Fi network. And obviously we have a server there, and on that server we have uploaded the whole curriculum, the ECD curriculum. You now can imagine that with that network and the backbone support that we got from the network, we have a number of Wi-Fi hotspots in the area, and it becomes a systemic. So the PowerPoint is lagging behind a little bit. Okay, here we got the Wi-Fi hotspots, and you can basically see that we have a network of Wi-Fi. Through that Wi-Fi, we can now provide early learning at no cost to the children. During COVID, we were able to transfer some of the educational materials onto WhatsApp and other social media so that children could continue to be educated and be in contact during the lockdown. So what have I tried to provide. So it seems to be. Okay, the linkage to the link, what I tried to provide is the linkage to the white paper of safety and security, particular 4 elements, the active public and community participation. How did we design an intervention? It was a clear co-design based on a challenge of how to connect safe water points and education and early childhood development as a foundational step for violence prevention. It's the early intervention, it's the integration of services, and obviously those spaces are also safe spaces and safe walkways and safe public spaces. And through that network, we were able to guide people through a safe environment to their places of work and to their places of residence. So thank you very much, and feedback to Thomas and the team. Thank you.
Michael, thank you very much for that very impressive presentation, also in Tonchini over the last couple of years. And again, sorry for the small glitches. I don't know, I think I have also stopped with my sharing here, but that's okay. So I would like to now, and before we go into the open discussion and exchange, particularly on the guides, we would like to welcome our international guests that are beyond South Africa to provide us with their respective and their perspective and experiences of integrated violence prevention interventions. Firstly, we are welcoming Felipe Galgani from Belo Horizonte in Brazil, who is the Chief of Staff in the Secretariat of Public Security and Prevention in Belo Horizonte. Please remember also to note down your questions and comments in the chat, or make use of the emojis as well that you have on your screen. If you want to clap, for example, or anything, there are a couple of other emojis that are quite nice, and we will come back to them just after the next 3 short inputs from our international guests here today. So Felipe, over to you.
Hi, Thomas. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for, first of all, I'd like to thank you and your team for this special invitation. It's such an honor to us to be here, and especially it's a huge responsibility for me to represent the team that really do this work we do together. So it's a huge responsibility being here representing them. You're going to pass the slides to me? Or can I do it by myself? Hello, are you guys listening? Okay.
I'm gonna, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I'll passively giving you a background of the city of Belo Horizonte. This is a landscape of the city. Belo Horizonte, beautiful horizon in English, and that's why we have this name. Could you just pass to the next slide, please? Just to give an overview about Belo Horizonte, we are a city with 2.5 million people. It's a big city to Brazilian standards, and you have criminality levels below the average of the Brazilian levels, but we still consider it still high. We still consider that we have a lot to do when you talk about criminality and violence. Please, the next slide.
Right.
It's very important to think about the Brazilian public security policies to consider the constitution. In the constitution, we have more clearly and more specifically the responsibility of the state level, especially with the military police and the civilian police and the prison system. But the constitution also opens the gate to the cities do something very important, do policies very important to try to solve this huge problem, which is violence and crime. Please, the next one. One thing that we can read on the Constitution is the possibility of creating municipal guards. The municipal guards are very important. In Belo Horizonte, you have above 2,000 members, and they are very important, making security and public buildings, public transportation, and also in hotspots of criminalities. We identify places where they were more needed, streets, squares, and they are doing an excellent job trying to prevent crime on those areas. So this is a very important thing to say. Another tool that we have in our policy is the Operations Center. The Operations Center have all the agencies from the state level and from the municipal level trying to work together. They preserve their autonomy, but they try to do an integrated job to guarantee security and public order in the city of Belo Horizonte. And it's a very important tool to underline too. Next one, please. But my presentation here is going to have like as a main subject, the prevention approach within the city. Next one, please. Our policy has four very important statements. One of them is the research about criminality and violence. Criminality and violence, sometimes you have a lot of opinions that are not based on evidences. You try to avoid that, and you try to, by research, to understand about about criminality and violence and how you actually can solve these problems, what really works to make the city and the communities a safer place. Another very important statement to us is the community participation. In every step of the public policy cycle, since the beginning, having the stakeholders, having the main actors involved in the participation process is a crucial aspect to us. Another very important thing is the intersectoral intervention. We consider that we have to work with the other agencies in the state level, in the city level. And this is something that we believe that we can get very good results from. Another very important aspect to the policy, last but not least, is the focus on territories with high levels of vulnerability. The criminality that I spoke before in Brazil, as in both cities in the world, are not concentrated, it's not spread in the entire city. It's concentrated in some territories, and we believe that we must get close to those areas and do something more specific for each one of them. Please, the next one. In those territories, we also realized that women and youth are more vulnerable than the other individuals. So we try to not just be close to the community, close to the territories, but close to these groups that we identified as more vulnerable to crime and violence. Please, the next one. I'm gonna do it very quick because I'm concerned to do that in 5 minutes. So I hope to do that a little bit not too fast as I'm doing right now. And then we have this as a process of developing our policy in a very quick way, being very fast. We have the local planning, and this local planning is made with the participation of the community. You have the local projects that were developed and designed also together with the community. And then we have public services, most of them designed to women and youth that lives on those areas. Please, the next one. Next one, please.
Can you see next one, vulnerability indicators?
Hello. Yes.
Yes, vulnerability.
Yeah, and this is when I talk about, okay, got it. And then when we talk about vulnerability, we found a way to actually measure it. We measure how much young people you have in this place, how much vulnerable they are to homicide crimes. You measure how many kids we have working on those areas. You measure the family income. You measure the fertility rate between 15 and 19 years old group. You measure the high school dropout rate, and you also measure the age grade distortion in high school ages. Combining all these indicators, we got this master indicator, which is the vulnerability. And in this map of Belo Horizonte, you can see some dark areas. Those are the more vulnerable and the one that we chose to start our projects. In the east, yes, you're pointing, thank you very much. The next, please. And when you got close to those areas, one of them more specifically were a scene of a lot of use of drugs, most crack, and alcohol. And we realized that we must do something about it. And we create this committee with other members of the city hall, because we consider the drug and abuse not a public security issue, but a health public issue. But also we were sure that we must, as public security sector and prevention sector, to do something about it. So we created this committee with all those members, and they are focused on projects about public security, safe urban spaces, and social protection. Could you pass, please? When you got there, you found a lack of public lighting, lack of street using. People were afraid to go to the streets, to walk down the streets, and more afraid they felt, more unsafer were the place. We found a lot of trash. We found a lot of things that the city hall and with all the other areas should work to make this place safer again. Could you please pass? And one thing that we also realized that it was that women were more vulnerable there. So we create this integrated center with services to them. Could you just pass, please? In this center, the women that were living on the streets with no security, no sort of protection, living by their own, now find they can find a place to take shower, to do the laundry, to have lunch and snack safely and for free, to access the internet, to access phone calls and make connection with their families and families and friends. Sometimes they lost these connections, and you do believe that's very important to put them integrated to society. They have access to education and professional education. They learn how to do a job, or how can work on some skills, get some skills to work and be back to sort of normal life in society. It's also a place to rest. Sometimes they stay on the streets so they can stay there for safer. And to finish and answer how the knowledge of the guide can support the work in the city, we are very excited to be here on this conference today, learning by the other experiences. We think these exchange experiences can help us a lot. The international cooperation city to city is something that we truly believe that helps the development, the global development. And you also consider that the guides, the methodology that you guys are using can make us can help us to find really good public policies examples of evidence-based policies. Once again, I would like to thank you, Thomas, for the invitation. It was a pleasure to be here. This is my email address. I would be very glad to be in touch.
Dear Felipe, I am very sure that we will be in touch with you also there's lots of room for more peer-to-peer exchange, and it was really interesting to see how you do this vulnerability indicator sheet for the whole city, and it's just amazing to see, and good work. We will definitely be in touch. Thank you so much for your participation and input. Now I would like to hand over to Professor Carlos Jimenez Romero, who is the director of the Institute of Human Rights, Democracy and Culture of Peace and Nonviolence, DemosPaz, the professor of social anthropology at the UAM in Madrid, and he also was the director of the participatory diagnosis on urban violence in the city of Madrid, and he's also a consultant within the peace agreements in Guatemala between 1996 and 2000. So looking forward to your input, Professor Jimenez.
Thanks a lot, Thomas. Good afternoon to everyone, and congratulations for this very important initiative and seminar. Congratulations. And thank you very much to the organizers for inviting and giving us this opportunity. It's a pleasure to share with you one of the main research areas of our institute. DemosPaz is an interdisciplinary university institute of human rights, democracy, and culture of peace and nonviolence. It was created through an agreement between my university, Autonomous University of Madrid, and the Culture of Peace Foundation, chaired by Mr. Federico Mayor Zaragoza, who was director of UNESCO for 12 years. The MOSPATH team would like to share the methodology for developing diagnosis of urban violence and construction of peace in cities. This program has gone through 3 phases. It started with the report Participatory Diagnosis of Urban Violence in the City of Madrid in 2017, in collaboration with the Spanish Research Association for Peace and with the Madrid City Council, in the framework of the First World Forum of Urban Violence and Education for Better Living Together and Peace, held in Madrid in April 2017. I would like to mention here my colleague, Antonio Zurita, by then the chairman of the Cooperation Department of Municipality and now consultant of UNDP. Starting from this experience in Madrid, this methodology has been shared with to other 3 cities, Montevideo, Uruguay, Praia, Cabo Verde, and Sucre, Bolivia, in the framework of the UNDP ART project, localizing sustainable development goals. Nowadays, this research area methodology is expanding in collaboration with different municipalities because the diagnosis of violence and peace is a crucial first step for local government to develop municipal action plans for peace construction. Let me summarize briefly some of the essential contents of the methodology that you are viewing. The process of the diagnosis counts with a participatory and comprehensive methodology that includes documents and statistical review, as well as primary sources. The local administration, experts, representatives of civil society, citizens, victims, are active participants in interviews, individual and collective conversation. In Spanish, we said colloquios, workshops, seminars, validation forums, among other ways of participation. They constitute driving groups for providing continuity of what we call shared knowledge, conocimiento compartido in Spanish, shared knowledge, conocimiento compartido. We see it's not only a diagnosis, but a process of communication in the city, and also of establishing assertive and cooperative relationships between institutional, technical, and social actors. This is a very important point that's connected with some of guides that have been presented in this seminar. Is the construction of relationship by a research. The result is a reference document for local decision makers, focusing by one hand on the different kinds of violence in the city, direct, indirect, or structural and symbolic, all the violences. And it's cross-cutting cause, named critical nodes, nudos críticos. This is a very important concept in our approach. Nudos críticos, causal factors of a transversal of all violences. For example, housing or transport, a different exposition before. And in the other hand, on all the processes of construction of peace and peace heritage. This is the second important concept, not only nudos críticos, also peace heritage, patrimonio de paz. During the course of the investigation, we realized that we should not focus only on violence, as this would present an image of the city not only partial, but also distorted and excessively negative. The systematization model includes 4 categories related to peace, violence, present and future, in order to first, suppress violence and critical nodes. Second, avoid future risks. Third, conserve the past heritage, conserve the past as a conservation, and 4, promote opportunities for the construction of peace. Each category is connected to potential political policies to be developed. In addition to prevention and adequate care for victims, another emphasis in our proposals is the development of a culture of mediation and peaceful management of conflicts in cities. To close my intervention, I would like to highlight that the document is open and dynamic. This conceptual framework is a solid base for the diagnosis, and the methodology can be adapted and applied for different contexts at a transnational level. In this sense, we are open and very interested in new agreements, collaboration between cities to continue applying and developing this methodology. We can insert in our methodology a lot of new initiatives that you are exposed in the guides. Well, this is our contribution, and we hope you have been interested. If any of you would like more information, we will gladly send you either the executive summary or the final report. We remain at your entire disposal. Thank you very much for your attention.
Professor Jimenez, thank you very much for your input and intervention. I think what was really, really interesting for us also here in South Africa, what you were talking about peace heritage, and I'd like to bring also the historic memory, the memoria historica, no?
Exactly.
Of countries like South Africa, but also in other countries, especially in Latin America, to foster social cohesion and to kind of like what you were talking about, to promote opportunities of peace. And in fact, also here in South Africa, within the social cohesion and nation building compact, we talk a lot about these issues, and it's kind of like to try to reach to the nitty-gritty of the risk factors. So, Professor, we thank you very much for your input. I am very sure we will be in touch also with you in 2021. To our looking also into the time, I would like to now hand over to Mr. Pablo Vasquez Camacho, the Deputy Secretary, Citizen Participation and Crime Prevention of the Secretariat of Citizen Security in Mexico City, and currently also the host of the World Forum. And with these words of introduction, please, Mr. Vasquez, over to you for the last presentation before we go slightly over time, but please bear with us to also go a little bit into the chat, because I see there is an active chat also going on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Thomas, and thank you for the invitation personally and in name of my country and the institution I represent. If you don't mind, I will switch to Spanish in the intervention. Bueno, muchas gracias a todas y todos. Es un honor y un gusto estar por aquí con ustedes, sobre todo en el contexto del Foro Mundial de Ciudades y Territorios de Paz, que en esta ocasión la Ciudad de México tiene el gusto de ser anfitrión, heredando el Foro de Madrid. Y este foro que inició, lamentablemente, con algunas afectaciones por el tema de la pandemia, pero inició en octubre y se instaló de forma permanente, diría yo, y estará con actividades hasta el mes de abril del año que viene, donde esperemos podamos quizá ya tener alguna sesión presencial y recibirlos por aquí para hacer lo que estamos haciendo el día de hoy, justamente intercambiar experiencias y aprendizajes en materia de construcción de paz. Entrando en materia, primero doy un poco de contexto de la Ciudad de México para dar algunos datos de referencia para quienes no estén familiarizados. Nuestra ciudad tiene cerca de 9 millones de habitantes en el área central, digamos el área de las fronteras de la ciudad, y su área metropolitana que compartimos con otras entidades del país llega hasta los 21 millones de habitantes. Cuando inició la presente administración, el gobierno de la Ciudad de México actual, encabezado por la doctora Claudia Sheinbaum, la Ciudad de México tenía una tasa de homicidios por cada 100,000 habitantes cercana a los 21 homicidios por cada 100,000 habitantes, ¿no? 20.8. En este momento Esa tasa se ubica en 13.7 homicidios por cada 100.000 habitantes, previo a la pandemia, porque es claro que el efecto del confinamiento no es despreciable a la hora de estar haciendo mediciones o estadísticas delictivas. Previo a la pandemia, esta tasa se encontraba en 14 homicidios por cada 100.000 habitantes. Entonces, hemos registrado, por fortuna, y creemos nosotros en gran medida, gracias al esfuerzo que se ha realizado desde el gobierno y también de la mano con la sociedad, hemos podido registrar un descenso significativo en la violencia, sobre todo homicida, que es el dato que cito porque es generalmente el que es comparable entre países, aunque también en otros delitos se ha registrado un descenso de este tipo. Insisto, siempre habrá que, ya tendremos tiempo más adelante en los años, todos los que estamos aquí, para verdaderamente analizar cuál fue el efecto del tema que estamos viviendo, ¿no? con la pandemia. La Ciudad de México, en ese sentido, ha impulsado una política de seguridad donde no solo la Secretaría de Seguridad Ciudadana, donde yo tengo el gusto de trabajar bajo el liderazgo de Omar García Harfuch, el jefe de la policía en la Ciudad de México, no solo la Secretaría de Seguridad Ciudadana tiene la función de impulsar la política de seguridad y de prevención, sino somos muchas dependencias, desde luego la Fiscalía y todo el gabinete social del gobierno de la ciudad, y yo la podría dividir en dos grandes estrategias. Una, desde luego, que tiene que ver, lo veíamos ya mencionado en alguna de las guías, con el fortalecimiento del sistema de justicia en la Ciudad de México. Nos encontramos con muchísimos retos, sobre todo retos en materia de coordinación, generación de inteligencia e investigación, que se han ido subsanando. No me referiré a ellos en específico por no ser tal cual la materia de este espacio, pero el otro gran componente tiene que ver con distintas estrategias que podríamos, creo, englobar bajo el marco de lo que comúnmente se conoce como prevención del delito, que tiene que ver primero con una expansión muy significativa de toda la gama de servicios, incluso creando nuevos para abatir desigualdades que estaban presentes en el territorio, desigualdades territoriales y desigualdades, desde luego, sociales en el territorio de la Ciudad de México, que creemos que estas desigualdades tienen, desde luego, una relación directa con la ocurrencia y persistencia de comportamientos delictivos y, desde luego, con la violencia. Se han expandido de manera sistemática y muy significativa los servicios de salud, las redes de movilidad en la ciudad, las becas a todos los niveles en materia de educación, la provisión de empleo temporal y también desde luego con actividades sostenidas, el impulso a algunas actividades económicas claves, entre ellas el turismo, la ampliación de infraestructura. Veía también por ahí, parecido a uno de los proyectos, se ha ampliado mucho la conectividad pública al Internet y se ha abierto todo un esquema de atención asertivo a las mujeres, que son quienes resienten más estas desigualdades y, desde luego, quienes lamentablemente resienten también la violencia producto de estas desigualdades. En términos generales, esta política expansiva de bienestar en la Ciudad de México, que hace tiempo no se registraba, es una de las cosas que a nosotros nos gusta mencionar como parte del paquete de estrategias de prevención, pero también se han creado programas específicos para atender a poblaciones que son particularmente vulnerables o poblaciones que se encuentran en mayor riesgo. Uno de esos esfuerzos, y quizá es el flagship, digamos, de la estrategia de prevención, es la creación de una serie de centros comunitarios que son puntos articuladores de comunidades que se llaman pilares, puntos de innovación, libertad, arte, educación y saberes. Son espacios, en muchos casos, reacondicionados, centros comunitarios que ya existían o infraestructura nueva que se ha expandido de forma exponencial. Prácticamente en lo que va de la administración se han construido el doble de centros comunitarios de los que existían cuando nos encontramos. Todavía faltarán algunos años de desarrollo de esta infraestructura, pero más allá del proyecto de infraestructura, que siempre es importante, lo que estos centros proveen a la gente es de un espacio para realizar distintas actividades deportivas, artísticas, culturales, pero también son centros para potenciar la educación y regularizar la educación de todas las poblaciones, desde niños hasta adultos, educación técnica, educación primaria, secundaria. Creo que me quedaría corto tratando de describirlos. Si no se ven, son centros donde confluye la comunidad y se vuelven articuladores de la misma. La estrategia de pilares. Otro programa es un programa que se llama Los Jóvenes Unen al Barrio, las y los jóvenes unen al barrio. Este programa tiene el esquema de una transferencia monetaria condicional. Lo que hacemos es que a jóvenes entre 12 y 29 años se les enrola en el programa a cambio de una beca, de un monto específico, de una tarjeta de transporte, y a cambio de eso se les pide que destinen 90 horas al mes a trabajar con el Instituto de la Juventud en distintas actividades que lo que buscan es vincular al gobierno con la comunidad en la que viven estos jóvenes, y se les pide que hagan trabajo comunitario buscando fomentar cohesión, articulación con todos los miembros de la comunidad a la que pertenecen, pero sobre todo con los jóvenes. Tratamos de captar poblaciones particularmente vulnerables en este programa, entonces hemos diseñado un conjunto de estrategias de captación que van desde priorizar a familiares de personas que se encuentran en reclusión, niñas, niños, adolescentes derivados por el sistema de justicia en medidas cautelares o en medidas con lo que en inglés llamaríamos probation, personas que captamos en la comunidad a través del mapeo de la inteligencia policial. Encontramos quiénes son jóvenes que están cerca de redes delictivas en mucho riesgo a lo mejor de empezar lo que podríamos llamar una carrera delictiva, y a ellos activamente vamos por ellos a la comunidad para enrolarlos al programa, etcétera. O sea, buscamos, no solo nos enfocamos, no solo atendemos esa población, pero buscamos priorizar esa población, la población que está más cerca de las redes delictivas o que ya se manifestaron, digamos, manifestaron una conducta pues ya delictiva como tal, es decir, que entraron en contacto con el sistema de justicia para poderlos atender. También tenemos una iniciativa, esta más en términos de piloto, en una zona de la ciudad que tiene una población de 266,000 habitantes, más o menos. Estamos haciendo una adaptación de una política pública originada en los Estados Unidos, que se conoce generalmente la metodología como disuasión focalizada. En Estados Unidos se llamó la Operación Cese al Fuego, que es un programa integral que lo que busca es que converjan las estrategias, vamos a llamarles disuasivas, con estrategias de apoyo a la comunidad y de segundas oportunidades a la comunidad. Este proyecto que se llama Alto al Fuego, que está enfocado específicamente en la reducción de violencia homicida o violencia ocasionada por lesiones de proyectiles de arma de fuego, parece que va teniendo muy buenos resultados. Habrá que ver. Es uno de los proyectos que de manera focalizada nos gustaría ir llevando. Es un proyecto de prevención y disuasión que nos gustaría ir llevando a otras zonas de la ciudad. Viendo las guías, creemos que son un esfuerzo por demás importante, y permitan extender una felicitación a todo el equipo que trabajó en ellas. Y a nosotros nos interesan particularmente por dos razones. Una, creo que pueden ser una muy buena herramienta para la integración de distintas estrategias. Les pongo un ejemplo ahorita en el centro de la ciudad. Se hizo una estrategia ad hoc por la temporada donde estamos entrando, le llamamos a la estrategia Barrio Adentro, y donde los programas que ya existen, sociales y de prevención específicos, convergen en este territorio, y esto hace que generemos una suerte como de task force específico para el territorio, y siempre será bueno revisar nuestros procesos de integración entre lo que ya existe para generar, digamos, estrategias ad hoc. Entonces creo que ahí puede ser muy bueno. Y también en materia de sostenibilidad, no solo sostenibilidad presupuestal, que siempre es un problema, sobre todo cuando hay cambios políticos, al menos en nuestra región, pero también sostenibilidad en términos de las alianzas y los partnerships que hacemos con sociedad civil y con otros actores sociales, que siempre ellos y ellas son quienes ayudan a que las estrategias perduren en el tiempo. Entonces creo que ahí vamos a poder encontrar muy buenas respuestas. Les agradecemos mucho invitarnos y habernos hecho parte de esta discusión, y desde luego en la Ciudad de México estamos a sus órdenes desde el Foro Mundial de Ciudades y Territorios de Paz para seguir este intercambio. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much, Thomas, for the invitation.
Mr. Vasquez, thank you very much for your input and your presentation. and also to refer already to the guides and how you believe in the city they could even actually give an support. And I'm sure we will be in touch with you also in 2021, and hopefully also within the World Forum there's possibilities when there's actually the face-to-face meeting later in 2021. Without any further delay, and also looking that we are already above the time, I just wanted to quickly go into the chat and to just check if there's any very urgent requests or any comments or questions that you would like to raise yourself. You may be able to just unmute yourself. We would be able to take at most 2 questions, but just to look also into the chat, there is a lot of comments and there was a lot of discussions. I'm really acknowledging, also looking into the in our South African district development model and how this can, and some of the case studies can be integrated in that. So I'm really glad that there was this discussion around that again. And as already mentioned by Ms. Elke Wolf in the beginning, that we already use the guides in one of our upscaling interventions called Safer Places, Resilient Institutions and Neighborhoods Together. It's our sprint interventions where we have a peer-to-peer learning network within the civil society sector, but also to test these guides and to test area-based approaches within a laboratory pathway where 10 municipalities within the country participate at the moment. It's just started and it has been gone very, very well, and it's something that we also look forward to engaging much more in 2021. Otherwise, if there is anything, please go ahead. I would just take maybe 1 or 2 if there is anything that you would like to mention still. Please just unmute. I give it a few seconds so that we can then also go into the closing at latest in 5 minutes. Please.
Just to let you know that the previous questions were answered, and there are many comments for congratulations.
Thank you very much, Elsa. If there is no one that would directly like to input and unmute their mic, I give it another 10 seconds. But I'm really glad and thankful for all the discussions that you have had in the chat already.
We have a request on the chat from Joy Jacobs. He will really appreciate a copy of Philippe's presentation if possible.
Joy, absolutely. We will definitely provide you with the whole presentation by latest tomorrow for all the participants. Absolutely, yes. And of course, also the context. And yes, there is the idea that we will be in touch in 2021 in this was a launch and we would like to engage much more in detail also with you within the workshop style to go with and through the World Forum in early 2021, February or March, but we will definitely be in touch with you. Okay, then I would like, yeah, Elsa?
Yes, we have a comment from Pumla that she would like to have is it possible to get a translation of Mr. Camacho's presentation? She will address to you. And everybody is thanking and giving congratulations the other ones. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Without further delay, then I would like to ask Mr. Terence Smith, our program manager of the Inclusive Violence and Crime Prevention Program, to provide us with with some words of closing. Over to you, Terence.
Excuse me, Thomas, here we have from Temba Fossi. Thomas, the critical issue is how to elevate these practical interventions in national and provincial planning and budgeting processes. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I mean to answer that. That's something that we are in consultations with, and that is exactly how do we upscale. And there are some plans in place, and there's definitely within the IUDF, within our urban policy implementation, of how do we learn from these practical insights in some of the areas where we work and support, and how do we then take them into the various provincial planning and budgeting processes as well. This is something that we will have constant consultations with, of course, also in the future. And maybe Terence, to just also mark and to go a little bit more into detail in your closing words. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. I hope you can all hear me and see me.
Yes.
My name is Terence Smith, or first of all, good afternoon to all of you, or good morning, wherever you may be. My name is Terence Smith. I'm working for GIZ here in Pretoria as the manager of the Inclusive Violence and Crime Prevention Program, which is one of the programs that forms part of the South African German Development Corporation, which was responsible for developing the guides presented today. As other speakers have well noted, this event today coincides with both the annual 16 Days campaign and the commemoration of International Human Rights Day. In this regard, please allow me to share some words of hope from one of South Africa's greatest champions of human rights, Nelson Mandela, in fact, whose passing 7 years ago we marked last week. Many who live with violence day in and day out assume that it is an intrinsic part of the human condition, but this is not so. Violence can be prevented. The inspiring strategies and case studies presented today, drawn both from the guides as well as shared by our international speakers, show that indeed violence is not inevitable and it can be prevented. And the goal of creating safer and more peaceful communities for all, and particularly for women and children, is feasible. In closing, I would like to acknowledge those who have made this event possible today. Firstly, Mexico City as the organizers of the World Forum of Cities and Territories for Peace, who have so graciously allowed us this platform to hold this event today. Then to everyone who's made time to attend this event online today, from South Africa and around the world, thank you for joining, and thank you for your contributions and the lively discussion I've seen on the chat. And then, of course, to our esteemed speakers today, Mr. Themba Fossi, Ms. Elke Wolf, Ms. Gianna Maita, Ms. Ayanda Hoji, Mr. Michael Krause, Mr. Felipe Galgani, Professor Carlos Jimenez Romero, and Mr. Pablo Vasquez Camacho. To all of you, thank you so much for your enlightening inputs. And then finally, but not least, a big thank you to the team who have organized today's event, in particular, Gianna and the colleagues from VPUU NPC in Cape Town, and of course, my colleague in the GIZ Inclusive Violence and Crime Prevention Program, Thomas Hellman. And of course, not forgetting our interpreters. Thank you very much. It was wonderful to have such a multilingual event today. Thank you. As Thomas mentioned earlier, today's event was not meant to be a once-off. It's intended to be the beginning of an ongoing international exchange and learning process on the topic of area-based approaches to violence prevention, which we plan to continue in the framework of the World Forum in 2021. So we're looking very much forward to engaging further with you in the months to come. And once again, please feel free to get in touch with us with any ideas and opportunities you may have for future exchange. With these closing words, once again, thank you very much for your participation and inputs. I wish you a very good rest of the day. For those of you for whom it's morning, for those of us who it's going into early evening, have a good evening. And of course, I wish you all a joyous and especially safe festive season. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Terence. And one last word before everyone goes off. I have stopped sharing the screen. We would like to take a photo of everyone. If you can all put your cameras on, that would be wonderful, and we will take a group photo that will also be part of then the presentation. Thank you so much, everyone. Over to you, Elsa. You can do that.
Of course, please, a big smile.
A big smile and a hands up. Thank you so much.
Please, one more, because we have a lot of participants. Big smile. Okay, I'm going to the next page. 1 minute. Great. One more and we're done. We are ready. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much and have a good evening. Bye-bye.